How's it going, everybody? Adrian Simple here, and welcome back to the Gaming Observer for Mailbag Sunday, July 12th. Thanks for your patience in my absence yesterday. Let's get into the show. Okay, so this is the mailbag question for today. What is a game that you can play over and over and never get bored of, and why? My friends, I had a lot of responses to this one in our Discord server. Thank you so much for participating. I won't be able to get to everyone's answer, but definitely go and check out what everybody said. I had a great time reading them all. So just kicking things off here, one of the common responses that we got was actually the games that are meant to be played frequently, that are designed that way. You know, one of them that really jumped out was the sports games, right? DMM1000 mentioned that they are still playing NHL 94, originally released on the Sega Genesis. They felt like it's the best sports game ever made, you know, that it's got these great mechanics that have stood the test of time. Apparently the game even has a prominent online community. You know, who would have thought that there would be an online community for NHL 94 in the year 2020? It's really cool. We also got a shout out to FIFA here from Kieran. He says that it's constantly replayable because it's easy to just jump right in without too much thought. You know, Rocket League is another good example of that. Both Evergreen King and Ginsturf mentioned those. And, you know, I have to agree with this one. Sports games bring an element of replayability that is almost unmatched, especially if you're into the real sport. And I guess it's just the gamer way of experiencing sports without actually having to get off of our butts. There are other multiplayer games that are good for that for similar reasons, right? Soulfire said Call of Duty, Himiko Toga said Team Fortress 2, Jarla mentioned Ark, Survival Evolved, Cooper said Overwatch, and I think we can all understand why somebody might be attracted to playing those games for hundreds of hours, potentially. When the games are made to be replayed, it makes us want to replay them, that makes sense. The answers that I found really interesting, though, were these single-player games that you wouldn't initially think has a whole lot of replayability, and for most of us probably doesn't. The one that really got me came from Kermitad Orc, who has completed the game Fable 3 over 100 times. And I mean, they didn't really explain why, but I found that to be such an interesting slice of life, where someone is able to play a game like that to such an extent. Another one here came from Jax, who mentioned that he constantly plays Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks, which was this linear 3D action fighter, not your typical Mortal Kombat. And he said, hey, you always discover something new, there's lots of secrets, and you can play with a bunch of different characters. And, you know, I've played that game, and I probably wouldn't be able to do a bunch of playthroughs of it. I would get really bored. But that goes to show how one game or another can really connect with someone, like Fable or a Mortal Kombat spin-off. I think that's so cool. And so that brings me to another reason why people will replay games, and that's for the emotional reasons. And that can be something as simple as nostalgia, right? Colby here mentioned how he loves to replay Mafia 2 because it was one of the first games that he played. The aesthetic connects with him, and it's a nostalgia trip. I'm sure we all have a game that is like that. Mine is Super Mario World. But then there's the other aspect of that, which is how a game really connects with you. Zach mentioned that he plays The Sims because, quote, there's just something therapeutic about creating another version of myself and living however I want at that particular moment, end quote. Crimson also said something similar with Journey. They said it's a short game, so it's easy to replay, but when they're feeling sad or overwhelmed, it's just a good game to refresh and chill out. And I've got to say, if you're listening and you don't have, like, your own chill-out game, you gotta find one, because it's always so helpful to have. I mean, maybe it wouldn't help everybody, but it's worth a shot. For me, it's the game The Binding of Isaac, which I know a lot of you might find surprising, but that game is basically muscle memory at this point for me, and I've been playing it for close to a decade. It's my way to relax into something that is familiar, which I find helpful when navigating the unfamiliar world that we live in, right? Anyway, folks, that is going to wrap us up for today. Thank you so much for participating. And again, I'm sorry if I couldn't get to your answer. I do try my best, I promise. And hey, if you would like to hear my answer to the question, make sure you enable the TGO After-Show, which you can easily find in the Flash Briefings section of the Alexa app. You don't have to do any searching for it. It should just be there automatically ready to be enabled. So thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with the news. And until then, happy gaming, everyone. Hey, it's the TGO After-Show. Hello and welcome. So let me give you my best attempt at answering this question, because I think I've probably talked about a lot of them already here on the show, and I kind of mentioned it on the main show there, like The Binding of Isaac, or I guess roguelikes in general. You know I play those games. I have hundreds of hours in various roguelikes. I'm playing one right now that I can't talk about because of embargo. I'm most definitely going to play Rogue Legacy 2. I'm a roguelike fiend, okay? So suffice to say, I can play roguelikes over and over for a long time. And I would say the biggest reason for that, actually, maybe this is a little bit of a different take, is because I'm able to do it without audio. Once you really master a roguelike and you understand what's going on, you really don't need to hear it unless it relies on audio in some way. Slay the Spire, Binding of Isaac, Rogue Legacy, I can play all of those games without needing to have the audio on, which means that when I'm listening to something like a podcast, or I'm watching a YouTube video on the other monitor. Heck, sometimes I've played Slay the Spire while I'm, like, doing homework, because, you know, some aspect of it requires you to listen to something. Then, you know, that's when these games really come in handy. For me, at least. But I want to try and answer this question as, like, a single-player game that I could play over and over. Something out of left field. And I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I actually am struggling quite a bit because I can't say there is a game that I play over and over, but there's probably a number of games that I could play over and over. One of the ones that comes to mind is Portal 2. I feel like there's a lot of different ways I could play that game. You know, speed running it or just experiencing the story over again because I love it so much. And certainly I have played the game a number of times, but I can't say that I've been endlessly replaying it, I guess. Okay, here's my take on it. I think I could probably endlessly replay a number of games that are movement-based, that feel good to play with its movement. You know, I've been scrolling through some of the older games that I've played and have enjoyed and could probably play again, and I'm thinking about games like Mirror's Edge, which is obviously, you know, a parkour game that's all movement, but I'm also thinking about games like Skate 3. You know, I always had a good time with Skate 3, literally just riding around doing nothing. I don't think I ever actually finished the campaign for Skate. I think I just, went to the various parks and then tried to do tricks. Because it was fun. Movement was fun. Same with the Trials games. I feel like those are great for the campaign. They're awesome. But also, I just spent a lot of time trying to perfect the momentum of it and get the highest medal that I could. And I mean, it helps that there was a leaderboard element to it. Same with Titanfall 2. I mean, again, the multiplayer, you're meant to play that over and over, but I think I could play the campaign a number of times. Just because it's so fun to run around that game and shoot enemies while you're wall running. I think I'm very much a movement guy. Actually, I mentioned something similar to this. We were playing Terraria on Twitch, on Kato's channel. And I was talking about the fact that I recently saw, a really bad game. It was basically abandoned. It wasn't... It essentially looked like a game that somebody made to try their hand at game development. But the whole concept of the game was that you had a grappling hook, and you had to get from point A to point B with your grappling hook. And I saw that, and I was like, even though this game looks terrible, and not worth the amount of money they were asking for, I would still consider buying it just because it has a grappling hook. Because grappling hooks are so satisfying to use. Anyway, there's a few different answers for you. Hopefully that's satisfying enough. Folks, that's going to be all for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with the news, and until then, farewell.